feel for England and Wales. Again, a bit fresher for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Wednesday's a largely dry day. Maybe this cloudier zone over the Midlands and South Wales generating a little bit of rain. And late in the day, we could see some thunderstorms drifting up from France across eastern England. So that is something we need to watch as the heat and humidity start to build again, with temperatures perhaps here on Wednesday getting into the high 20s. Bye for now.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Drivers face challenges on the A92 Tay Road Bridge due to double-deck vehicle restrictions and speed limits of 30 miles per hour caused by high winds. The A483 is closed from Sarn-Wye-Bryn-Keld roundabout to Trollwang roundabout with diversions in place. 15-minute delays are reported on the A50 eastbound in Staffordshire between junctions with the A518 at Toxeter north and east. On the M25 anti-clockwise in Surrey, a crash at junction 9 has closed one lane. And on the trains, no trains run between Lincoln and Grimsby Town. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
A very good evening and welcome to the show. This is GB News Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. On tonight's show, Iran launches missiles at US bases in Qatar and Iraq. And that's in response to strikes on its nuclear sites over the weekend. The good news for now is that Qatari officials have confirmed that they successfully intercepted all missiles, and we're hearing reports of no casualties on the ground. But the status of the missiles headed towards Iraq is still currently unknown. Could the breakdown in the Middle East hurtle us towards World War III? And meanwhile, back here in the United Kingdom today, Nigel Farage launched a so-called Robin Hood tax, snatching £250,000 from wealthy foreigners to hand £600 cash bonuses to Britain's lowest earning workers. Bold patriotism, or is it merely socialism in disguise?
They say, why do we bother? Because the people next door do nothing, and they're pretty much as well off as we are.
Is this a great British idea, or is it just Corbynism with a new rosette? That's all coming up on tonight's show. Well, shows pleasure to have your company. Dramatic news in this past hour as six missiles, we understand, have hurtled towards that US air base in Qatar. It's the biggest US air base in the entire region with some 10,000 troops. The good news is, as we understand it, those missiles have all been successfully intercepted. Is this the Ayatollah having a PR win, shoving missiles out he knew would never get through, or are we hurtling towards something altogether more serious? Get in touch. GBNews.com/your say is the way to do that. But now it's time for your headlines, and here's Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you and good evening. Your top stories at 7:02. And breaking news tonight is that Iran has launched a missile operation against US military bases in Qatar and Iraq. It's understood that President Trump is currently in the Situation Room, with the White House saying that they are closely monitoring potential threats to the Al Udeid base in Qatar and Ain al-Assad base in Iraq. Qatari officials confirmed that they successfully intercepted all of those missiles. Reports are that the Trump administration was aware in advance of Iran's attack on the Al Udeid base. Meanwhile, Iran reportedly coordinated the attacks on those bases with Qatari officials and gave advance notice that attacks were coming to minimise casualties. And on that note, no US casualties have been reported after Iran attacked the Al Udeid air base with short and medium-range missiles. That's according to two US officials. Defence Minister Luke Pollard, speaking in the House of Commons a short while ago, said that the UK government utterly condemns any escalation. These latest developments come as the UK issued a warning earlier recommending UK citizens in Qatar to shelter in place until further notice, and Qatar announced that it was temporarily shutting its airspace. The RAF evacuated 63 British nationals from Israel to Cyprus earlier, with more flights to come. Foreign Secretary David Lammy told the Commons this afternoon. That's as a British national was injured in Israel during missile attacks by Iran. We'll bring you more on this developing story as we get it throughout the night. Elsewhere today, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says she's decided to prescribe Palestine action and will lay an order before Parliament next week, which, if passed, will make membership and support for the protest group illegal. That's as the Metropolitan Police Chief, Sir Mark Rowley, expressed his shock and frustration at a protest held today in support of Palestine action. Protesters clashed with police, and at least 2 people have been arrested at the protest as we know it. On Friday, Palestine action activists broke into RAF Brize Norton in Oxfordshire and sprayed 2 military planes with red paint in protest of the UK's support of Israel over the war in Gaza, which the Chancellor called totally unacceptable. Plans to lower energy costs for thousands of businesses by exempting them from some green energy levies has been set out as part of the government's new 10-year industrial strategy. The plan may slash energy bills by up to 25% for more than 7,000 UK businesses. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer called the industrial strategy a turning point for Britain's economy by supporting key industries where there is potential for growth. Acting Shadow Energy Secretary Andrew Bowie criticised the plans, saying that the UK needed a serious approach to energy policy. And the UK and Ukraine will work together more closely on industrial military production, Sir Keir Starmer has said after meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky in Downing Street today. The Ukrainian president also met with the King at Windsor Castle. Mr Zelensky travelled to the UK to discuss his country's defences ahead of a NATO summit that starts tomorrow. He thanked British troops for supporting his country. Those are your latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Katie, and welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, your host, Martin Daubney. Now, in a shocking escalation of the Middle East conflict, Iran has launched multiple missiles at US bases in Qatar and in Iraq. Explosions have been heard over the Qatari capital of Doha. Qatar has issued a statement strongly condemning the attack and has said its air defence successfully intercepted the missiles. Now, as we speak, President Donald Trump is now in the West Wing attending a National Security Council meeting with the White House, briefing that they are monitoring threats to all US air bases. And according to Iranian state media, the missiles send a clear and explicit message to America in that the world will not leave any attack on its territorial integrity, sovereignty and national security unanswered under any circumstances. Well, for a full update of the latest, let's join now our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So in this past hour, those missiles went in. We spoke about an hour ago. What's the latest? Are there any confirmation of any casualties or indeed of any missiles causing any damage to US bases on the ground there?
Good evening, Martin. Yeah, we can bring you right up to date with that. And thus far, it seems good news. The Pentagon confirming that there have been no US casualties in what was an attack on the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, an attack using short to medium range ballistic missiles fired, we understand, from Iran. Now, clearly the situation has been confused over the last hour and a bit with reports that US Air Base in Iraq was also targeted. However, the Pentagon and US officials are not confirming that. They are only confirming that one site was attacked, and that was the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. So that an update on what we heard earlier, and again, good news if it was only one site targeted. Having said that, it's all relative, isn't it? It's not good news that this nation, Iran, has decided to lob ballistic missiles over into another country and into a US airbase. What I will say, though, and it sounds a bit counterintuitive perhaps, but this might be the measured response that the US can live with, because what we understand is that through intermediaries, the Iranians alerted the US and indeed the Qataris to what they were planning several hours before this attack took place. And that would explain alerts that I got a bit earlier, Martin, which told me that the US Embassy and in fact the State Department was warning US citizens in Qatar to shelter in place until further notice. So clearly the information, the warning that they had got from the Iranians through those intermediaries, they then put into motion an operation to protect the base and to ensure that those citizens in Qatar were as safe as they could be, to hunker down in their local addresses and stay there until this was all over. Now, is it all over? That's the big question. If this was one attack, and according to the Iranians, Martin, they used the same number of missiles as the bombs that were dropped on the nuclear complexes. I can only imagine that they're talking about the bunker-busting bombs, which were about 14 in number, because we're told about a dozen missiles came over from Iran. So it wouldn't be the totality of that operation, which saw, according to the US, some 75 precision-guided munitions that were used on all of those nuclear complexes. If it had been that many missiles that had come from Iran, one, I doubt their ability to be able to launch that number, given how Israel has degraded their surface-to-surface launching capabilities over recent days. But two, it would be such a very significant step up in response that would probably elicit a response from the White House, from the American administration. Now, you mentioned there that Donald Trump is in the West Wing. That is absolutely true. We're told that he was down in the Situation Room, in watching with the other head Secretary of State for Defense, other military officials in there, watching the events unfold and planning exactly what they would do to mitigate for any attack coming over. And of course now, obviously, trying to decide if any response is required, Martin.
Thank you, Mark White there. The world, for now, can breathe a sigh of relief. No casualties on the ground and no reported damage to US bases there. Thank you very much, Mark White. Let's bring in my next guest. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. Mr. Philp, welcome to the show. Obviously, very concerning news coming in, but for now, it seems no casualties, and all eyes now will be on what Donald Trump's next move is.
Good evening, Martin. Yes, that's right. I think Donald Trump made an entirely understandable decision to seek to eliminate Iran's nuclear weapons capability after he had previously, I think, and privately given them an ultimatum which then expired. I think it is merciful that no casualties have resulted in Iran's retaliation. I think those countries like Qatar, of course, Arab countries who completely condemned Iran's response are right to do so. And it's thankful that those Iranian missiles didn't cause any damage. I don't think Iran has any justification for retaliatory action, particularly given that America's strikes were targeted at nuclear and other military installations and military personnel, which of course contrasts Iran's response into Israel, where they've been hitting civilian sites, which is completely reprehensible.
And perhaps, Chris Philp, this has all of the hallmarks of what will be allowed to be sold to the Iranian people via state propaganda as a victory, responding to Donald Trump's aggression while actually not causing any damage that would precipitate a wholesome response from Donald Trump in return. But Chris Philp, could I ask you about the British political situation? A lot of people have been thinking that it's been rather embarrassing for the United Kingdom's position in all of this, because Keir Starmer, David Lammy, they seem to be of the intent that de-escalation was certain. And then Donald Trump completely ignored that. Benjamin Netanyahu also appears not briefing the United Kingdom on its next move. Do you think that the United Kingdom has been shoved to one side in this, is somewhat obsolete, not seen as an ally now of either the United States or Israel?
Well, it's clear that Keir Starmer and David Lammy were out of the loop and haven't really had any influence over the various protagonists in this conflict. That much is clear, and they haven't really been able to articulate a very clear position on this. They're essentially sitting on the fence, aren't they, in an effort to try and offend nobody, which is pretty weak and not what you expect from a national leader.
Do you think that that is just an embarrassment for our international standing and certainly a very testing thing for the so-called special relationship?
Yeah, I think it is embarrassing that Keir Starmer has been unable to take a clear position on this important issue. It shows a complete lack of leadership, and it reveals him to be a weak leader. I mean, we see this a lot domestically, for example, over his complete inability to sort out illegal immigration across the Channel. We see him being weak there, and now we see him being again weak on the international stage because he essentially can't make his mind up and he can't get off the fence. He's just sitting on the fence to avoid actually saying anything decisive one way or the other, and that is not how you expect strong leaders to behave.
And Chris Philp, when we talk of regime change, the toppling of the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran, do you think that's the best thing for the stability across the Middle East and also the best thing for ending Islamism, stamping out the cancer of Islamic fundamentalism, not only in the Middle East, but also with implications on our own shores?
Well, there's no question that the Iranian regime is a brutal one, which has been repressing its own people for a very long time now, whether that's cases of that tragic case of a young woman who chose to just walk down the street without wearing a headscarf, which of course is her right to do, and she was carted off by the religious police and murdered in custody. We've seen the Iranian regime murdering their own citizens who have been protesting. We've seen the Iranian regime sponsor terrorism. around the world. They've even sponsored attacks right here on British soil, where journalists, Iranian journalists who have been criticising the Iranian regime, have been targeted by criminals at the behest of the Iranian regime to try and murder them. And at one time, an Iranian TV station had to relocate out of London for their own safety for a period of time. I think, thankfully, they're now back. So that gives you, I think, the repressing and murdering people on their own soil, sponsoring terrorism around the world, and pursuing and harassing and attacking dissidents on other people's territory, including UK territory, tells you, I think, a lot about the Iranian regime. But I think it's ultimately, I believe in democracy. I think the Iranian people should have their say, and it would seem that the Iranian people are pretty fed up of the brutal regime that's been oppressing them now for nearly 50 years.
OK, thank you for joining us on the show this evening. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp, it was a pleasure to have your company. Thank you very much. Now, coming up, President Trump is currently attending a National Security Council meeting. How will the US respond to this latest flagrant attack against American forces on the brink of a wider conflict? Or is there still room and time for restraint? That's next.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
What stresses you out the most?
Oh, stupid people. Yeah, stupid people. Actually, I'm convinced the world is full of stupid people.
Right, OK.
All right, so stupid people.
Why are you looking at me? Why are you looking at me?
No, I actually wouldn't look at you, mate. You're a smart person. But no, honestly, if you were in my life, particularly when you rely on people to do things for you and they just can't see the obvious thing to do.
Oh, no.
But you have to be very grateful that they are doing things for you.
Yeah, that's...
Ellie, for me, it depends on the mood I'm in. Because if little things happen and I'm not in the right mood, then everything drives me crazy.
Now, that is a very good point. So, micro stresses.
Is that what it is?
But according to the Daily Mail this morning, 89% of Britons are finding the small stresses is exhausting them the most.
Yeah.
Things like being stuck in traffic.
Yes.
Hate that. The bin bag breaking.
I actually don't mind being stuck in traffic.
No, I do. I find it
That's OK.
Great on my soul.
Unless it's late, I'm late for something. Although I was stuck for about 3 hours trying to get home yesterday.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but you see, I don't think those are micro stresses. I think they're major stresses.
Full-on stresses.
That's what the study says,
So listen, don't pass them off as, it's only just stuck in traffic. That's a major thing.
OK,
Yeah.
that's major stress. OK.
Yeah.
It says sometimes it triggers the same exhaustion as a single major life event if you have lots of these in a day. So bin bag breaking is you taking it out, losing your keys.
That's a major one.
Yeah.
That's major for me.
People who walk slowly. That is so irritating. Forgetting to charge your phone overnight, forgetting to put the bins out, not being able to find an outfit.
You know what I really hate? Really, really grinds my gears?
What?
Is when I either let someone out, and when I'm in the car, I let someone out and they don't say thanks, or I stop and let them cross over and they don't go...
That's irritating.
Then I go...
Well, I tend to agree with you, Paul.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, your host, Martin Daubney. Now, we continue our coverage of Iran's attacks against the US air bases in the Middle East. President Donald Trump is currently attending a National Security Council meeting. US officials are briefing that the Trump administration was anticipating Tehran would retaliate after US strikes on Iranian nuclear sites over the weekend. And the president does not want any more military engagement in the region. However, the senior White House officials said that President Donald Trump is willing to escalate US military involvement if necessary. So just how will the US respond to this attack? Well, let's get to my next guest. I'm joined by Tobias Ellwood, the former Defence Secretary. Tobias Ellwood, welcome to the show. Pleasure, as always, to have your esteemed company. So what do you think happens next?
That is the question. The situation remains very fluid, as you've just been discussing, and we try to appreciate the scale of Iran's retaliation. Iran was obliged to respond, or the regime would have been seen to look weak. This attack on the Al Udeid base in Qatar, is it a one-off, or is there more to come? If it is the former, then the US might determine that, given that there were no casualties, no requirement to respond. But it's then thrown back to President Trump. He's utilized his superior military might. There's no doubt about that. But he now needs to show the statecraft to say, where does this all go? Defeating the regime, setting them back militarily is the easy part. It's the strategic thinking. It's the stability, the plan that follows. That's the tougher challenge that lies ahead. And that's what we now need to see, is the diplomatic initiatives that America now takes over to say, where does this move forward? Iran's capabilities have been hugely diminished, but the reason why America has hesitated for so long in attacking Iran in the first place is because what do you do if the regime falls? And it is now in a precarious situation. If it did fall, civil war could easily follow. And given the size of the military that's there, you could easily see a dictator then taking over. So you're also then left with a situation that we haven't had any real damage assessment on exactly what happened to those research facilities to create a nuclear weapon. I have to say that if I was Iran, I would have squirreled away that 400 kilograms of enriched uranium long ago, either into another country and the scientists with it, or into another secret location. So there's still a lot of homework to do to understand whether the threat still remains from a nuclear capability. And then where's the off-ramp, if this is the case, that both sides are now going to temper back their attacks on each other?
Can I ask you a question I just asked Chris Philp a short while ago, and that is, has the United Kingdom been completely made almost a bit part of this? It's been cut out of communiques. We heard a short while ago the Armed Forces Minister in Parliament could not even say what the UK knew before Iran's strike, before Israel's strike, before Donald Trump's strike. Diego Garcia, Chagos wasn't used. Britain had been cut out of the loop. Has Britain's inability to take a stance in this situation made us redundant, a spare part on the world stage?
No, I think you're reading a bit too much into it. I understand why you say these things, but we remain extremely close with the United States. I attended the Armed Warfare Conference with Rusi last week, and to see our senior military generals engage with each other, that relationship is second to none. It's the closest in the world. I understand Britain was informed prior to these attacks, but America had decided, I think reluctantly as well, for the reasons why I've articulated. They were actually speaking to Iran through negotiations and were drawn into this because Israel decided to interpret the IAEA report to say a nuclear weapon was on its way. That wasn't America's interpretation. So America has gone from being bystander to being lead combatant here. The role of Britain, I wouldn't dismiss it. There's some back channel work. We have a convening power as well, but we're no different from other nations such as France and so forth, that America, once they made that decision operationally to then attack Iran, then it was left over to those in uniform to then conduct this and execute this forensic operation, which went down very, very impressively indeed.
Thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to have your company. That's the former Defence Secretary, Tobias Ellwood. Thank you. Now, joining the studio now to continue this conversation by GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, who was, as the former political editor of The Mirror, spent a lot of time with Tony Blair's cabinets during the Iraq War. Now, I want to, Nigel, draw your attention to Donald Trump. Of course, he's taken to Truth social media and he's just said this: the sites that we hit in Iran were totally destroyed and everyone knows it. Only the fake news would say anything different in order to try and demean as much as possible. And even they say they were pretty well destroyed. Working especially hard on this falsehood is Alison Cooper of Fake News CNN, Dumb Brian L. Roberts, the chairman of Comcast, Johnny Carl of ABC Fake News, and always the losers of, again, Comcast, NBC Fake News. It never ends with the sleazebags in the media, and that's why their ratings are at an all-time low, zero credibility. Nigel Nelson, as you'd imagine, Donald Trump not particularly happy reading between the lines there, because CNN have been claiming that Donald Trump's nuclear strikes weren't effective. Is very, very quick to blast back at them.
Isn't he just? We don't know how effective they were. I mean, Donald Trump claims that they were an absolute success. There is no way of knowing. The satellite pictures aren't coming back to show whether these sites have been destroyed. I think Tobias Ellwood was right, that Iran must have known it was coming, in which case they'd have got their enriched uranium out of those places and hidden somewhere else. So until we have some kind of independent confirmation that this was a success, it is purely a boast by Donald Trump at the moment without any independent evidence.
Nigel Nelson, you were chewing your lip vociferously at the notion that both Chris Philp said and Tobias Ellwood, mainly Chris Philp, that Britain has become more or less irrelevant in this, been cut out because its inability to show that we're a true ally to Israel in its darkest hour, its inability to stand shoulder to shoulder with Donald Trump, as Tony Blair did with George Bush. Britain has just become irrelevant.
I think more sitting on the fence, which is actually where Britain wants to be at the moment. The only way that we'll get involved is if we are attacked, and that is right. And that is because of the experience of Tony Blair and because of what happened in Iraq. Now, I was with Tony Blair in 2007 when he made his last visit to Iraq, and the country was a basket case. And the reason for that was because there was absolutely no plan for what happened after the war ended. It left a power vacuum. Over the ensuing years, ISIS then moved in, which took us a long time to deal with. The danger of a regime change in Iran is much the same. We don't know what kind of regime would follow. And certainly there's no plan, as far as the Western leaders have got, about what should follow.
Okay, Nigel, we've got to interrupt here because we do have confirmation now, breaking news, and that is that no Iranian missiles hit the US military's Al Udeid base in Qatar. A US official has told Reuters. Now, confirmation, we heard that from news sources, but now confirmed by the White House. Just to repeat that, no Iranian missiles hit that US military Al Udeid air base in Qatar, a US official has told Reuters, and the initial assessment follows an attempted attack by Iran on the base using short and medium-range missiles. So, Nigel Nelson, confirmation there. And it's all about the threshold of counter-attacks, of revenge attacks, if anything were hit, and certainly if any US personnel were injured or killed, it would have been a very, very different state of affairs. It seems for now we can breathe a sigh of relief.
At the moment, I mean, still Donald Trump's unpredictable. We don't know quite what he might do. But let's hope this is the end of it, that Iran have given a show of strength. That's for domestic consumption. Haven't hurt anybody. They seem to have actually warned that the missiles were coming. So on the basis of that, if this is over, you're absolutely right. It's a sigh of relief for all of us.
And ayatollahs, despots in these nations, they need to look strong. They need to be able to show their state's propaganda, pumping out images of them firing rockets towards the infidel. They need to do that, otherwise they'd be completely eviscerated, politically have no reputation left. We saw that when Hezbollah sent missiles into Israel. They were firing missiles, but they weren't really firing missiles, if you get me. They wanted a PR win, but they didn't want a war. Do you think this is starting to feel a bit like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would hope. And that's why why we should hope that this is actually the end of it, that Iran has done its retaliation. The big danger now, of course, is if it's got this 60% enriched uranium and it's increasing it to 90% for nuclear bombs, is that this kind of thing will make them more determined to create a nuclear bomb rather than less.
But Iran cannot possibly win a war if it joins up against... I mean, now we have Qatar has every right to strike back. Iraq, all of these nations now can consider themselves having full justification to strike Iran if necessary. It wasn't just an attack on a US airbase, it was an attack on Qatari soil. So Iran can't possibly take on Israel, the USA, and all of these other Arabian countries.
No, it can't.
It'll be obliterated.
You're absolutely right, it can't. I mean, and Qatar has said that they reserve the right to actually strike back at Iran for what they've just done. No, I mean, in the event that there is a war, Iran would get flattened. The Iranians must know that, which is why one hopes this is just the last show of strength before packing up.
And we have another breaking news for you now, and that is the Iranian state media has just announced that Iran will continue its retaliation in response to US attacks. A senior Iranian official that's told to Reuters News. So just to repeat that line, Iran will continue its retaliation in response to US attacks. That's a senior Iranian official has just told Reuters. Again, Nigel Nelson, you'd expect them to say that. The war of words, the propaganda, the PR machine, you'd expect them to talk tough. But so far, at least, that threshold for the fire and brimstone response from the United States doesn't seem to have been reached.
No, so I mean, if they do come back for more attacks and they do actually injure or kill US personnel, then Trump really will react badly. And as you say, Iran can't win a war in the Middle East.
And isn't it funny how at the start of Donald Trump's presidential campaign, he called himself the president of peace, the president who didn't want to get involved in any more foreign forever wars, except when opportunity knocks. Iran, undeniably, is the head of the snake, feeding Hamas, feeding Hezbollah, funding them. And maybe the opportunity to take down the Ayatollah, maybe the opportunity to take down a nuclear Islamic fundamentalist Iran, simply too big for Donald Trump to ignore.
It may well have been, and I think it was a mistake. I mean, it would encourage Iran to develop nuclear weapons if it still can. Look what happened to North Korea. That Kim Jong-un saw what happened in Libya, which didn't have nuclear weapons. He saw what happened in Iraq that didn't have nuclear weapons. He then beefed up his nuclear arsenal for that reason. What these sort of attacks cause is proliferation, not non-proliferation.
Yeah, but as Donald Trump said to Little Rocket Man, as he called him, because we've both got red buttons, but mine's bigger than yours and mine works. Nigel Nelson, thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure. Now, coming up next, back to domestic politics. I'll be joined by Reform UK's Mayor of Lincolnshire to talk about their so-called Robin Hood tax. There's Nigel Farage as Robin Hood. And that tax aims to take £250,000 from rich foreigners to give 600 quid to Britain's poorest workers. Is this a patriotic win, or is it Corbynism in disguise? That's next.
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For many, it's fine out there this evening, but we are going to see some wet weather working its way in, bringing a wet start for many tomorrow. A more humid feel tomorrow. It's been quite fresh today with a brisk westerly wind. And these weather fronts are now approaching, bringing cloud and rain across Northern Ireland through the evening. Nothing too heavy at this stage, but could see some heavy pulses developing later in the night across Northern Ireland and then across parts of northwest England and North Wales, along with much of southern Scotland. It turns soggy through the early hours. Further east and further south, most areas staying dry. Reasonably warm night. Temperatures mostly holding up in the teens. On to Tuesday, and as I said, a bit of a wet start for some, particularly northwest England, North Wales, southwest Scotland. Some of that rain at times getting to the east of the Pennines. Much of East East Anglia in the southeast starting dry, may well start off with a bit of sunshine here, but quite grey for South Wales, southwest England. There's that zone of wet weather over Northern Ireland, northwest England and southern Scotland. Some breaks in the cloud a little further north, but again here we'll see further showers coming in at times across the far northwest. So as I said, it is a bit of a messy picture. The rain across northern England's likely to last on and off through much of the morning. Same goes for North Wales. Some of it getting to the east of the Pennines, but a decent chance that areas here will stay dry. Not much rain at all getting to East Anglia, the Midlands, and here actually better chance of seeing some breaks in the cloud come the afternoon. That will lift the temperatures. Quite warm if the sun pops out, 25, maybe 26 or a degree or so higher. And quite a humid feel for England and Wales. Again, a bit fresher for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Wednesday's a largely dry day. Maybe this cloudier zone over the Midlands and South Wales generating a little bit of rain. And late in the day, we could see some thunderstorms drifting up from France across eastern England. So that is something we need to watch as the heat and humidity start to build again, with temperatures perhaps here on Wednesday getting into the high 20s. Bye for now.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back now. Of course, tonight at 9 p.m, it's the unstoppable Patrick Christys tonight, and the star of that show joins me now. Patrick, what's on your menu?
OK, Martin, a couple of big things, of course. I'm going to be having a look at the threat from Iran here in Britain. We've had a load of their useful idiots out on the streets today, and we're taking a close look at that. The other big thing is that, as you know, we've been reporting a load of human trafficking gangs to the National Crime Agency. Well, we checked up on them today, and it appears that every single one of them is still operating. So we've got a blow-by-blow account of that and some serious questions to be asked, especially when you consider how many Iranians are coming over on those small boats. I'll throw it back to you now, Martin. You've got a lot on.
Patrick Christys, you've got a pair. You get stuck in. Fantastic show, 9 to 11. Patrick Christys tonight. Beautiful. Now, back to domestic politics, because Nigel Farage today unveiled plans for a Britannia card offering wealthy foreign nationals exemption from tax on overseas income for 10 years in return for a one-off £250,000 payment. Now, the proceeds will go to the lowest earning 10% in Britain. And the announcement comes as the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is reportedly reconsidering her pledge to impose a 40% inheritance tax on the global wealth of non-doms announced in last year's budget. Now, experts warn that Labour's stance has triggered a millionaire exodus, with one reportedly leaving the United Kingdom every 45 minutes since the Labour Party took office. Rather than raising funds, it could cost the Treasury up to £111 billion by 2035. Now, Nigel Farage's plan draws a sharp dividing line with the Labour Party. Is it a smart move to attract investment, or, as the government puts it, a bonanza for billionaires? Well, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio now by Dame Andrea Jenkins, of course, Reform UK's Mayor of Greater Lincolnshire. Dame Andrea, a pleasure to have your company. This is Nigel Farage, the avowed Thatcherite, sounding a bit socialist.
No, I mean, look, what this is, I mean, even I can get, I'm a Thatcherite supporter. Even I can get behind this, because Labour's making such a hash of everything. We're losing the millionaires out of Britain, and this is a way to bring them back again and show them that, you know, we're serious about creating a climate where, you know, everybody can thrive, and at the same time we'll have your money and we'll give it to the most needy. So,
you know, Chris Hope said an intriguing thing earlier, our political editor. He said this actually is testing the public mood of what people think of Reform UK, because a lot of people still think that the right-wing party.
Yes.
But this is basically taking from foreign billionaires, millionaires, and giving to the UK's poorest, oligarchs. Sheikhs from Arabia, suddenly could be a £600 bonus in the red wall. And I think it's a bit confusing for people who think that the party is right-wing. And it's given us the opportunity to do a cartoon of Nigel Farage wearing a Robin Hood outfit.
Let's look at this.
If we can get that on our screens, that would be beautiful. On a serious point, how do you think this will go down with working-class voters?
Interestingly, the Robin Hood Party messaged me on Twitter today, Vaughan from the Robin Hood Party, thinking that we're, pinching their policies, etc. But look, I think it'll go down well in the red wall. I'm, working class girl myself, and we do need to pull off Labour. We've started to pull off Labour. We've seen, for us to win that majority, we need to pull off Labour. And I think the fact that we're giving from the most wealthy, who have left Britain, quite a lot of them, to give to the lowest income earners, I think that's a good thing.
Nigel Nelson, let's bring you in. Taking from the rich and giving to the poor is what the Labour Party used to do. Now they're just forcing the rich out of the country. Isn't Nigel Farage stealing their thunder?
Well, I think that what Nigel Farage is doing is actually fighting on two fronts. So on one hand, Reform's idea is to make the Tory party extinct. On the other is taking on Labour. And this seems to be a policy designed to do both those things. Question really is whether or not the practicalities work out. I mean, it's a neat idea. It's quite clever. It sounds good, but how on earth it can possibly work? The tax expert Dan Needle is saying that it could cost £34 billion over 5 years.
It's so good driving billionaires and millionaires out of the country. That's the estimate of what Labour's non-dom policy has already cost.
We won't know. There are about 74,000 non-doms in Britain. We won't know how many have actually left until the end of the year when we get official figures. These are all estimates, so we don't know, because they're highly mobile, they're hard to track down. So we don't know whether or not that some will certainly have left. We don't know those kind of figures have left.
But look, we can appeal to both. I mean, I think that's what Thatcher did, wasn't it? That she won in red wall seats and she won in the blue wall seats as well. And what Thatcher was about, it was about the pride in our country, wasn't it? It was about a strong armed forces. And this is what Reform's about. As our tagline goes, it's about community, country, and family as well. So we can do both. And the fact is, we do want to abolish the inheritance tax, and I would like to see it abolished full stop as well. Somebody who works hard, I want to give my house and
my assets to the children. But how would that go down with a farmer who's got a multi-million-pound bill for inheritance tax?
Yeah. Well, that would be abolished.
No, it won't be abolished.
No, a farmer. Oh, you mean abolishing inheritance tax all the way through?
Oh, yes,
So
completely.
will you abolish inheritance tax before you bring in this policy?
Well, look, we need to see the fine details, but what I would like to see is, British people, we abolish inheritance tax, and the non-doms, we take their 250,000.
If the non-doms get it first, for 250,000, you could...
No, of course not. You've got to get
a foreigner getting a great deal, which a native Brit won't.
Look, the British people are the priority for reform, so they come first, and this is why we're trying to get money from the non-doms.
As I understand it, its inheritance tax will be scrapped for everybody,
yes, absolutely.
British citizens and non-doms.
Which will have to come in first.
But to qualify for that, you've got to pay £250,000. We have to leave it there. Damon Rodriguez, thank you very much. Nigel Nelson, of course, always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Now, coming up next, a BBC presenter had to overrule her woke auto cue. We'll be taking a look at that next. Pregnant person don't exist. It's women. That's next.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations forecast.
Following a peak in the temperatures across the western Mediterranean in the last few days, it is now turning fresher. There are a few showers to watch out for, particularly across areas of Iberia. Generally, though, further east, it's high pressure in charge, and that's allowing the heat to also transfer eastwards. Particularly parts of northern Italy into the Balkans will see those temperatures climbing, but the high pressure also means there'll be plentiful amounts of sunshine for these regions right throughout the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations forecast.
In the
GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, your host, Martin Daubney. Now, a BBC News presenter appeared to reject gender-neutral language during a live broadcast. It was magnificent. Martine Croxall was citing a study about protecting vulnerable people in hot weather, and after reading out the report's phrasing, immediately rolled her eyes and changed the wording to women. Take a look.
London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine has released research which says that nearly 600 heat-related deaths are expected in the UK. Malcolm Mystery, who was involved in the research, says that the aged, pregnant people, women, and those with pre-existing health conditions.
Perish the thought that I would ever overrule an auto cue. But look, J.K. Rowling was among those to support the presenter, calling Croxall her new favourite BBC presenter on X, of course, formerly Twitter. And perhaps it's a sign that things have changed. Even the BBC have reportedly backed the presenter for her use of honest language. Well, joining me now in the studio to discuss this is Janet Murray, a marketing campaign strategist, a women's rights campaigner and the host of the Courageous podcast. And earlier this year, Janet was cancelled for making a video explaining why you didn't like the phrase pregnant people. Tell us your story.
So at the end of February, I made a video which was ostensibly marketing related. So it was I was talking about this idea of attract and repel in marketing. And I talked about how I was listening to a podcast, and this particular podcast, they started off by saying, in this podcast, we're going to be talking about pregnant people, the impact on maternal health care. And I just thought, ooh, no, that's just awful. I've had a lot of challenges I've had pregnancy loss, miscarriages, ectopic pregnancy. So I really do feel like I know what it means to be a woman. And so I was just talking about how the fact this really turned me off, but I acknowledge the fact that some people might actually find it quite an inclusive phrase and, you know, might be quite compelled by that. And I expected there might be a little bit of pushback, but I didn't expect what happened to me after that.
What did happen next?
Well, it started off with the typical things that happen to women who speak up about their sex-based rights. So I was called a Nazi, I was called a bigot, a transphobe, alt-right, and then...
But you weren't alt-right, you were just right. I mean, let's be honest.
Well, exactly, yeah. I was speaking the truth. And I was also expressing an opinion which was protected in law, always has been, although that's been clarified since the Supreme Court ruling. And I was exercising my right to free speech. Some people came along and they made some quite unpleasant comments on that video, which is fair enough. But they took it a step further. And they headed off to other social media platforms to write long-form content, so articles about me, and really encouraging other people to also say that I was a Nazi. There were some really unpleasant references to turning people into lampshades, that kind of thing. And it was just one series of attack after another.
Did this impact your livelihood, your reputation, your mental health?
Yeah, so I had clients that reached out to me and said they didn't want to work with me anymore. I run a community interest company, and somebody who was going to be a director for it's a choir that I run, said they don't want anything to do with me anymore. And really, my views were presented as extreme. They're not extreme. I was speaking about biological truth. I was also expressing my opinion as a woman. And it's just wrecked my livelihood, my business, and that was at the end of February, and it's still going on now.
Well, I'm dreadfully sorry to hear that, and I commend you, actually. You spoke the truth, and guess what? What you said now has been called honest language by the BBC, who's been, tied to this word salad, this woke nonsense. Do you finally think that a corner could be turned and this nonsense might be consigned to the dustbin of history?
Well, I think, like many women, I was cheering when I saw that video of Martine. I've watched it many, many times, particularly loved the eye roll, really enjoyed that. But I think there is a turning point. I think the Supreme Court ruling has obviously helped make some progress in that area. I think the other thing is that J.K. Rowling has announced this fund, and so that women who do find themselves... I mean, I'm self-employed, so there's no protection for someone like me, but people who are employed or are self-employed, potentially they could access that fund, but also people who are employed, and if they find themselves needing to fight a legal case, there's that fund available as well. And I think all of this is starting to kind of come together to, I suppose, make women a little bit more defiant. My reading of it was that she was quite defiant, and I like that.
Yeah. Well, look, can I thank you for coming on the show? Can I thank you for your courage? And I wish you all the very, very best for the future. Janet Murray, wonderful to have you on the show. Honestly, thank you very, very much indeed. Splendid. Up next, State of the Nation. Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg hoves into view like a vision of truth. What's on your menu?
Well, I hope it is a vision of truth. We've got to talk about Iran, Israel, the United States, the utter feebleness of the government. His Majesty's government won't even say whether they think it's a good idea or not. So we've potentially been saved from nuclear war in the Middle East, and His Majesty's government has no idea. None at all. This is so feeble, it's so craven. We may have taken a big step to making the world safer, because Iran having a nuclear bomb would be so dangerous. So that's the main topic of conversation. And then this reform tax plan we're going to be talking about, where we're going to get £250,000 or money coming in from foreigners and paid out to British workers, not rich British workers, but ones who are earning, but not well off. I think it's a really interesting idea.
It's a funny idea because, on the one hand, it's discombobulating to those who paint Reform as a right-wing party, because this is old-fashioned socialism, if you think about it.
Well, not quite, because old-fashioned socialism requires the state to do everything. So you pay the money to the state, and the state then spends it on your behalf, and spends it very badly. This is saying to people, look, we're going to give it to you directly. You spend it. It's quite like Singapore. Friends of mine who work in Singapore, some years get a cheque from the revenue. Wow, saying we didn't spend all our money this year. Have a bit back. I quite like that idea.
Sounds to me, Sir Jacob, like you might be one of those men in tights yourself. Robin Hood in disguise. Thank you very much. State of the Nation up next with Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. I'll be back tomorrow 3 till 6. But first, here's your weather.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For many, it's fine out there this evening, but we are going to see some wet weather working its way in, bringing a wet start for many tomorrow. A more humid feel tomorrow. It's been quite fresh today with a brisk westerly wind. And these weather fronts are now approaching, bringing cloud and rain across Northern Ireland through the evening. Nothing too heavy at this stage, but could see some heavy pulses developing later in the night across Northern Ireland and then across parts of northwest England and North Wales, along with much of southern Scotland. It turns soggy through the early hours. Further east and further south, most areas staying dry. Reasonably warm night. Temperatures mostly holding up in the teens. On to Tuesday, and as I said, a bit of a wet start for some, particularly northwest England, North Wales, southwest Scotland. Some of that rain at times getting to the east of the Pennines. Much of East Anglia in the southeast starting dry. May well start off with a bit of sunshine here, but quite grey for South Wales, southwest England. There's that zone of wet weather over Northern Ireland, northwest England and southern Scotland. Some breaks in the cloud a little further north, but again here we'll see further showers coming in at times across the far northwest. So as I said, it is a bit of a messy picture. The rain across northern England's likely to last on and off through much of the morning. Same goes for North Wales. Some of it getting to the east of the Pennines, but a decent chance that areas here will stay dry. Not much rain at all getting to East Anglia, the Midlands, and here actually better chance of seeing some breaks in the cloud come the afternoon. That will lift the temperatures quite warm if the sun pops out, 25, maybe 26 or a degree or so higher. And quite a humid feel for England and Wales. Again, a bit fresher for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Wednesday's a largely dry day. Maybe this cloudier zone over the Midlands and South Wales generating a little bit of rain. And late in the day, we could see some thunderstorms drifting up from France across eastern England. So that is something we need to watch as the heat and humidity start to build again, with temperatures perhaps here on Wednesday getting into the high 20s. Bye for now.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£54,321 in totally tax-free cash could make your year the best yet. How would you react if you got that winning call?
Oh my God, I'm going to cry. Oh my God. Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here